Hi, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Combating Cancer. My name is Gwen Kelly, and I'm your host. If this is your first time tuning in, I just want to say hi and thank you so much for joining this community. A little background about me is that I was diagnosed with stage 3 astrocytoma brain cancer at the age of 19. The reason I created this platform is because I wanted there to be a safe and honest space for people navigating every side of cancer. Whether you're in treatment, in remission, grieving the loss of someone you love, a caregiver, or simply someone trying to better understand what cancer does to a person and how to support them, I hope these conversations remind you that you are never alone. Today's episode is a little different because I honestly don't have a script. I don't really know exactly where this conversation is going to go, but something happened last week that has been sitting on my heart, and I haven't been able to stop thinking about it. Last week, I was scrolling on social media and I came across a video from a young girl who has terminal cancer, and what she said honestly stopped me in my tracks. She said the scariest part for her isn't dying, it's that the people around her have stopped talking about the future. They stopped saying things like, I'll see you next year, or they stopped talking about summer or making plans months from now, and every goodbye feels heavier, every hug lasts a little longer. Every look feels like there's something being left unsaid. She said that every time she looks into the eyes of her parents, her siblings, and her friends, she can tell they're wondering if this is going to be the last time they ever see her. And I just sat there because I cannot imagine how lonely that must feel. To be the one who's sick, the one who's fighting, the one carrying the diagnosis in your body, and yet somehow also feeling like you have to convince everyone around you not to give up on you. That is a weight no patient should ever have to carry. Because when you're going through cancer, you're already fighting battles that most people never see. You're trying to understand treatment plans, medication schedules. You're trying to process what doctors are telling you and prepare yourself for side effects. You're trying to convince yourself that you can get through another infusion, another surgery, another MRI, another blood draw. You're trying to live inside a body that suddenly feels unfamiliar. And every single day, you're trying to hold on to hope. You're trying to wake up every morning and tell yourself, I can do this. You're trying to believe that your life isn't over. You're trying to believe that there's still a future waiting for you. So when the people around you begin acting like they've already accepted the worst possible outcome, it changes something. Even if they never actually say it, you feel it. Cancer makes you incredibly aware of people's energy. You notice the hesitation. You notice when people stop bringing up the future. You notice when conversations suddenly become careful, when someone hugs you a little tighter than normal, and when people start looking at you with pity instead of possibility. And sometimes that hurts more than people realize. Because you're already carrying enough fear on your own, you don't need everyone else's fear placed on your shoulders too. And now I want to make something really clear. If you're a parent, a spouse, a sibling, a caregiver, or a friend listening to this, you're allowed to be scared. You're allowed to cry. You're allowed to be angry. You're allowed to question everything. Cancer's terrifying. I would never expect someone who loves another person to not be afraid. But I also think there's a difference between being honest about your fear and making the person who is sick carry your fear too. There's a difference between saying, I'm scared, but we're going to get through this together. We got this. And looking at someone like they're already gone. There's a difference between crying with someone and making them feel responsible for comforting you. Your loved one doesn't need you to have all the answers. You don't need perfect words because there's never going to be the perfect words to say. And the words don't even need to always be positive. But they do need to know that you still believe there's life ahead of them. Because when you stop talking about next year, when you stop making plans, when every goodbye starts sounding like a final goodbye, whether you mean to or not, you're telling them that everyone else has quietly moved into grief while they're still trying to fight for their life. And that's heartbreaking. And it also made me think about something else. Why does it always seem like the person with cancer has to be the strongest person in the room? And hey, I can say that. I've had cancer, so I kind of have the cancer card to say this, but, they're the ones getting poked with needles, going through chemotherapy, radiation, waiting for their MRI results, being in the machine, losing sleep, wondering if treatment is working. watching their body change, trying to recognize themselves in the mirror. And somehow, they're also expected to comfort everyone else. And here's the thing. I have seen both sides of it. I know how terrible it is as a parent, as a spouse, as a friend to watch someone you love go through cancer. There will always be that fear. There will always be anxiety while you're waiting for a scan, while you're waiting to see how the person is tolerating chemotherapy and treatment. I get that. But also, on the flip side of things, it's exhausting sometimes because it's exhausting trying to survive while also trying to convince the people you love not to lose hope. But one thing I'll always be grateful for is the way my family chose to handle my diagnosis. Did we have moments where we cried? Oh, yeah, absolutely. Were there moments where we were terrified? Yeah, of course. We're human. And there were conversations behind closed doors that I'm sure were incredibly difficult. There were tears that I never saw. And there were moments where all of us wondered, why is this happening? But one thing my family never did was decide that the statistic got to write my story. From the beginning, our mindset was simple. We're not believing in the statistic. Did we know what the statistics were? Yeah, absolutely. Of course, we knew how serious the diagnosis was. We listened to the doctors. We learned everything we could. We understood what we were facing. But we refused to let the percentages become my identity. We refused to wake up every morning believing that a number on a research paper had already decided how much life I had left. Instead, my family had a saying that honestly carried us through some of the hardest days. It's okay to mope. It's okay to cry. It's okay to be angry. It's okay to spend a few hours feeling everything we need to feel. But after that, we're getting back in the saddle. And we're going to stop this pity party we're having. And that didn't mean we were pretending everything was okay. It didn't mean we weren't scared or heartbroken. It simply meant that fear wasn't going to get the final say. We weren't going to spend every day mourning a future that hadn't been taken away from us yet. We were going to feel the emotions, pray through them, lean on one another, and then keep moving forward. Because what else are you supposed to do? I mean, looking back now, I realize what an incredible gift that was. Because I think sometimes people believe they only have two choices, which is either you completely fall apart or you pretend everything is fine. But I don't think either one is healthy. I think there's a third option. You gotta feel everything. You gotta cry when you need to cry. You need to ask God the hard questions. Tell him you're scared. Tell him you're angry. Tell him you don't understand. Why is this happening to me? Wipe your tears, take a breath, and take the next step. Not because the fear magically disappeared, not because everything suddenly became okay, but because your life is worth living even when you're afraid. My family never promised me that I was going to be cured. They never promised me everything would work out exactly the way we wanted to. What they gave me was something even more valuable. They gave me permission to keep living. They kept talking about my future. They kept speaking life into me. They kept making plans. And they never treated me like I was already gone. And they reminded me that I was still Gwen, not a brain cancer patient. And on the days when my hope felt weak, I borrowed theirs. And I honestly think that's one of the greatest gifts you can give someone with cancer. You don't have to know what's going to happen. You don't have to guarantee a miracle. You simply have to remind them that there's still life left to live. When I was diagnosed at 19, I knew the statistics. Believe me, I knew them. People sent them to me. I read them. The doctors talked about them. The internet definitely talked about them. And I had to make a decision. Was I going to spend every day living according to a statistic? Or was I going to spend every day believing that my story didn't have to look exactly like the numbers on a research paper? Because statistics describe groups of people, they don't determine individual lives. And while I can't control what happens to me, I can control how I choose to live today. And cancer has already taken enough from me. I'm not going to let fear take the rest, because here's the truth, and I always say this, none of us are promised tomorrow. Cancer just has a way of forcing some of us to realize that a lot sooner than others. And every single person listening to this episode is living without guarantees. The difference is that cancer puts mortality right in front of your face, and it makes you truly realize how fragile life really is. But I refuse to let that realization keep me from living, keep me from dreaming, from planning my wedding, from becoming a wife, from building this podcast, from believing that God still has a purpose for my life. Not because I know what tomorrow holds, but because I know who holds tomorrow. And maybe that's what I want to leave with you today. If you love someone who has cancer, please don't bury them while they're still here. Don't stop talking about next year. Don't stop making those plans, and don't stop inviting them into your life. Let them know that you still see a future with them, because sometimes hope isn't a big speech. Sometimes hope sounds like, hey, when you're done with treatment, we're taking that trip. Or I can't wait to celebrate your birthday. Or what do you want to do next summer? Should we go to Italy? Or I'll see you next year. Those words may seem small, but to someone who's fighting for their life, they can feel like oxygen. Sometimes the greatest gift you can give someone isn't pretending everything is okay. It's choosing to believe with them before they can believe for themselves. And maybe today, you're the one who needs to borrow someone else's hope. Maybe you're listening from a hospital room. Maybe you're caring for someone you love. And maybe you're grieving. Wherever you are, I just want you to know this. Your story's not over until God says it's over. So keep believing, keep praying, make those plans, and keep saying, I'll see you next year, because hope matters. Sometimes it's the very thing that keeps someone going. Thank you guys so much for listening to today's episode of Combating Cancer. As always, if this conversation encouraged you, I'd love if you shared it with someone who needs to hear it. And if you're walking through cancer yourself or loving someone who is, I hope you know this community is here. That's all I got, and I'll see you next week.